take a moment and think about your favorite memory from childhood. I bet that many of you are thinking about playing with a friend or family member. It's certainly that way for me. My whole family's from Brooklyn, and I remember at an early age playing on a concrete playground in Brooklyn with my identical twin brother. Everything on the playground was concrete and metal, whether it was the tunnel we were climbing through, the slides, the swing set, or even the now extinct seesaw. And in the summers, we used to play at the beach in nearby Breezy Point. But wherever we were, and whatever we were doing, we would play until the sun went down. That is disappearing today. And if you think about kids playing, it's easy to see that play benefits the physical, right? You see kids hopping and skipping and jumping and climbing and swinging. They're benefiting physically. But play is much more than that. Play is how kids make friends. Play is how kids build strong bonds with the caring adults in their lives. Play is how kids explore their creative sides and how they learn 21st century skills like negotiation and collaboration and problem solving and perseverance. In the language of early childhood experts, play benefits the whole child. I see that even more now as the dad of 3 play experts. I see it in my eldest daughter, who when she was 4 years old showed such grit and determination to teach herself how to do the monkey bars. And despite blisters on her hands and sore muscles, she refused to quit until she made it all the way across. And I see it in my middle daughter, who tends to be shy, but has an easier time making friends when she's playing. And I see it in my youngest daughter, who learns how to navigate the world by emulating her sisters. And this is proof that concrete slides do still exist. This is in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. So whether you think about your own childhood, you think about your kids, or you just picture kids' smiling faces, could you even imagine what it would be like to have a childhood without play? But that's exactly what is happening on our watch. Kids this generation are playing less than any generation before them. PE and recess are being cut back and eliminated from schools at an alarming rate. Kids are spending 8 hours a day, that's 4 months out of every year, in front of a screen. And the prevailing perception and the unfortunate reality in too many communities is that our neighborhoods are too unsafe to let kids play. And that idea of playing until the sun goes down has become a distant memory. And kids are worse off as a result. They're unhealthy, they're unhappy, and they're falling behind academically. 1 in 3 kids in the US is overweight or obese. 1 in 5 has a mental illness. And the US, despite being the richest country in the world, ranks number 30th in math and science worldwide. But we don't have an awareness problem on our hands. This isn't going to be solved by a PSA campaign. What we have is an action problem. Most people feel powerless to change the way that kids are growing up these days. When I became a dad almost 10 years ago, we were very fortunate to live in a Brooklyn neighborhood that had abundant opportunities to play. And now my family lives outside DC in a community that has tons of playgrounds and ball fields, and my kids walk or bike to school every single day. But even I feel the pressures that every parent feels, the pressures of not enough time in the day, the pressures of concerns for our kids' safety, the pressures of all-consuming technology. And the list goes on. And these pressures get in the way of every parent's desire to just let their kids be kids, to let them play, and to play with them. And even though I counted myself among the 90% of parents in survey after survey that say that they understand the importance of play in their kids' lives, I didn't know it was a cause until KaBOOM. Some quick context. This coming year, KaBOOM will celebrate our 20th birthday. 20 years ago, our founder and CEO came across a Washington Post article about a sister and a brother, Aisha and Clendon, 2 and 4 years old, who in the middle of a heat wave in the summer in DC went looking for a place to play. They found an abandoned car, they climbed inside, they got trapped, they suffocated, and they died. The reporter, trying to make sense of this senseless tragedy, went looking in Aisha and Clendon's neighborhood for a place to play, and she couldn't find a single playground within a 3-mile radius of their home. Meanwhile, the city government and the community were pointing fingers at everybody, and nothing was getting done to benefit that community. Darryl felt compelled to take action, not to form an organization, but to solve a particular problem in partnership with a particular community for the benefit of the kids in that community. And that's the story of the first KaBOOM playground that we built. Today, in a few hours, we'll be putting the finishing touches on 2 more playgrounds, one in East Oakland and the other in Camden, New Jersey. And that'll bring the total to 2,668 playgrounds that we've built in partnership with low-income communities all across the country. In the process, we've engaged over 1 million volunteers and provided places to play for millions of kids. And the secret sauce is in how the playground gets built. We guide the community through a 2 to 3 month planning process where we build their capacity and their confidence to build a better, stronger environment for their kids. And it starts with the kids, where they draw their dream playground at a design day. And we see some amazing drawings of monkey bars and slides and swings, and even trampolines and rocket ships. And it's great to see their creativity on full display, and you see how engaged they are because they know they're creating something of value, not just for themselves, but for their friends, family, and community. And the process culminates with 200 volunteers with no special skills coming together and building a playground in 6 hours. When you arrive on site in the morning and you see the vacant lot, the first thing that comes to your mind is, there is no possible way. We are not going to get this done. But it shows the power of collective action and collective effort when you come together for a common purpose, because by mid-afternoon, there's a beautiful new playground for the kids to play on. I had the great fortune of being able to volunteer for my first playground build in 2010. And frankly, I had a ceremonial role. At the time, I was working for the Corporation for National and Community Service, which runs national service programs like AmeriCorps, and we were helping out that day. But I quickly got caught up in the collective effort, and together, side by side with the community, we made sure that that community had a beautiful new playground at the end of the day for its kids. So 2 more playgrounds as a volunteer, and 2 years later, I joined KaBOOM and found my calling. And of the 20 or so playgrounds I've had the opportunity to help to build, a couple have been particularly meaningful to me. A year after Hurricane Sandy, I was back in Breezy Point. This community had borne the brunt of the storm, and a place that I had played as a child and had created such wonderful childhood memories for me was now creating a different kind of memory for the kids of Breezy Point. And I remember meeting with the parents and them telling me that a year after the storm, their kids were still having nightmares. And when we asked the kids to draw their dream playground, we saw fewer trampolines and rocket ships and more barriers to protect against the water. But with hundreds of volunteers, together we came together and rolled up our sleeves, and we built a beautiful new playground right on the beach in Breezy Point, so that the kids of Breezy Point are now creating joyful new memories. I also had the opportunity to build a playground in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, a few blocks from where my grandparents grew up. A community that had once been a launch pad for new immigrant families who were seeking the American dream was now trapping families in a cycle of poverty. Since 2000, the number of Americans who are living in areas of concentrated poverty has increased by 91%. And kids are more likely than adults to live in these areas of concentrated poverty. But I could tell by the joy on the kids' faces as we finished that playground that we had created yet another oasis of hope. An oasis where kids' potential is valued and nurtured and celebrated. And I was proud of the work that we did that day, and I'm proud of all the work that we do at KaBOOM. But it also left me feeling like there was so much more to be done. Because the fact of the matter is, kids deserve better than an oasis. What about the vast space in between the oases? When I look at my own kids, it's clear to me that they see the world as their playground. It doesn't take much to get them to play, whether we're at the park or on a sidewalk. All it takes is a small invitation, a prompt, like uneven steps or playful art, and they're playing. But that's just an unscientific sample of 3, so we had to ask the experts. So we asked behavioral scientists from Ideas42, a nonprofit that uses behavioral science to address societal challenges at scale. And we asked them, what's it going to take to get kids to play more? And more specifically, what are the barriers that are getting in the way of kids playing? And they had 2 key insights for us. First, you could go through the whole day and not even think about play for your kids. So unlike nutrition, where every time you go to the grocery store, or you go out to eat, or you open up the refrigerator, you're confronted with the choice between the healthy option and the unhealthy option. When it comes to play, there's no natural moments during the day where you're even thinking about it. And second, even if you overcome that hurdle and you think about play, all the little hassle factors get in the way and create a big bottleneck that prevents you from playing with your kids. Think about what it takes to go to the playground. First, you got to make sure that your kid has the right clothes, and then do you have the right supplies with you? And is there a safe way to get there, not just for you, but for your kids? And when you get there, is there a clean public bathroom in case someone has an emergency, as always seems to happen with my family? And then you play, and you're all tired, and you schlep home. And then you've got to get back to the 20 other things on your to-do list after you've cleaned up the kids. And all these little hassle factors add up and get in the way of making the decision to play. And it makes it too easy for parents or other caregivers to decide, sorry, but now's not the time to play. So if those are the barriers, we then asked Ideas42, okay, well, what can cities do to overcome these barriers? Why cities? Simple. The future of our nation is inextricably tied to the future of kids in cities. The numbers speak for themselves. Over 80% of the US population lives in urban areas, and contrary to popular belief, the percentage of kids is slightly higher. Of those kids, 22%, 13.2 million kids are growing up in poverty. And when it comes to play, most of the key decisions that impact play and the ability to play happen at the local level. Whether you're talking about investments in infrastructure, policy decisions, or programming, those decisions are made at the local level. And as we have gridlock in Washington and constrained state budgets, we're seeing city governments, the governments of last resort, become hotbeds of innovation on a wide range of issues, from livability to climate change. And we need cities to take that same innovative spirit and use it to benefit kids and families, particularly kids growing up in poverty. So what did Ideas42 tell us? They said that cities need to integrate play into the daily routine of kids and families. Okay, so what does that mean? 25%, kids in low-income areas spend 25% more time than their more affluent peers doing chores and running errands with their parents or other caregivers. So yes, we need cities to have great playgrounds, great oases of play. But in addition to that, we need playable sidewalks and playable bus stops and even playable laundromats. Everywhere that kids and families are spending an inordinate amount of time, and that time is usually filled with moments of frustration, like waiting in line at the grocery store with your kids or at the health clinic. Play can turn those moments of frustration into moments of joy. So in other words, kids know best. The world is their playground, and cities need to enable play to happen on the playground and beyond. But the bad news is that cities are designing kids and families right out of them. Urban living is becoming increasingly unaffordable, and new housing tends to cater to singles and couples without kids. And when it comes to city master planning, when budgets get tight, as they inevitably do, the first thing that get cut is kid-friendly amenities. And even in those cities that are making great strides when it comes to livability and walkability and bikeability, those things are not benefiting kids. I wouldn't want my daughters riding their bike there, would you? In 1960, the percentage of kids under the age of 18 in San Francisco was 25%. After booming economic growth, that percentage is now 13%, a far cry from the national average of 23%. It's clear that cities are not prioritizing kids and families, and kids are suffering as a result. We have an opportunity to reimagine cities with kids in mind and to reclaim childhood in the process. Because we shouldn't settle for sidewalks that don't meet the needs of kids and families. We shouldn't settle for bus stops that create frustration rather than alleviate it. We shouldn't settle for public art that is beautiful to look at, but warns kids not to touch it. As our good friend Gil Penalosa from 880 Cities says, that's like giving kids ice cream and telling them not to eat it. And we certainly shouldn't settle for solutions that benefit only a privileged few. It's doable. And the good news is it's beginning to happen, where a few cities are being innovative and creating kid-friendly public space, where it's hard to tell where the sidewalk ends and the playground begins, where training wheels are allowed and even welcome on the bike lanes, and where public art is intended to be played on. But we need much, much more. Imagine what's possible in a short amount of time. Think about cycling over the last 10 to 15 years. The biking movement's been around for generations, but there hasn't been much change until recently, when a handful of cities decided to innovate and create bike-friendly infrastructure. And so we've seen painted bike lanes, and now we're seeing protected bike lanes and bike-sharing programs. And all of a sudden, you've got dozens and hundreds of cities all across the country competing with each other to have the most bike-friendly infrastructure, to stake claim to that title of the most bikeable city. And in some cases, these cities are going so far as to think about and plan for a minimum grid that would make their entire cities bikeable. The demand for biking was always there. It was just latent and invisible, until a few intrepid mayors decided that they were going to take a gamble, and the gamble has paid off. And we see it in the extreme behavior change that's followed. Just one example, the daily ridership in New York City doubled in less than 7 years. But a note of caution, even with these great advances, biking's not benefiting everyone. In DC, where I'm from, We have over 70 miles of bike lanes, but up until recently, there were 0 in Anacostia, the area of the city with the highest concentration of poverty and the highest concentration of kids growing up in poverty. So yes, we need a domino effect with cities innovating and replicating to become the most playable cities, but we better make sure that that innovation benefits the kids who need it most. It's time to reimagine cities with kids in mind. It's time for cities to embrace playability. I believe that we can create a new generation of kids that knows what it's like to play until the sun goes down. And it's up to all of us to make sure it happens, because kids will be better off as a result. More active, more engaged, more creative, happier, healthier, and more successful. And together we can ensure that all kids get the childhood they deserve, filled with play. Thank you.